Hey everybody, it's Damien from Guitar Journey here, and today I want to help you get started with improvisation, guitar leads, guitar soloing, whatever we might want to call it. Playing a cool guitar lead is actually a lot of fun. It's one of the most rewarding aspects of being a guitar player, and we can do it on both electric guitar or on acoustic. You'll find guitar solos in pretty much every genre of modern music, whether it's blues or jazz or rock or country, you name it. But if you've never done a guitar solo before, you may not know where to begin. Today I'm going to give you 5 kind of starting points, and where within these 5 points you choose to focus will kind of depend on your own overall level of experience. You can use these stages interchangeably, but I'll try to present them in order from, let's say, someone who has absolutely no experience at all, has never done a guitar solo at all, to maybe someone who has kind of, so to speak, dipped their toe in the water a little bit. Okay? Now, you don't really need much experience or knowledge or music theory or whatever to start improvising, but I am going to make one assumption. I'm going to assume that you know at least one scale. Very often, if you're a guitarist, that first scale you learn is going to be a pentatonic scale. But, you know, for example, if you play a different instrument, you might have learned maybe a major scale, what's sometimes called the diatonic major scale. Sometimes you'll hear it go by that name. Really doesn't matter. Pentatonic scale, major scale, diatonic scale, whatever. That doesn't really matter because I'm not really interested in giving you much of a music theory workout right now. I'm just going to assume that you know at least one scale that you can use in your improvisation, and we're going to talk about ways to utilize that one scale. And ultimately, yes, your soloing at this point is really just going to consist of playing different notes from that scale over a chord sequence that happens to be in the same key as the scale that you know, of course. You need to be in the same key. Now, of course, there's a ton more stuff that you can do, but for now, just playing, using that scale, playing notes from that scale over the chord sequence is what we're going to focus on, and that's going to be very, very effective, okay? And as long as you don't deviate from that scale, I can promise you, you're actually not going to hit any wrong notes. True, some notes may sound sweeter than others, but you won't really hit any wrong notes, any really ugly kind of dissonant notes, okay? So let's just get right down to it, okay? The first stage is if you're just an absolute beginner, never done this before. You literally have never done a solo, and basically you have no idea what to do, okay? Honestly, at this point, all you really need to do is try putting on a jam track, again, that's in the same key as the scale that you know, and just try to play some notes. Really, just try to play some notes, okay? Noodle around, okay? Remember, you got to start somewhere. And your first solo is not going to be anything amazing. Of course it's not. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Just try to hit notes at random. You don't need to be thinking about music theory. You don't need to be thinking about having some really great phrasing. Just hit notes more or less at random and listen to how they sound over the jam track, okay? Now, if you follow this Guitar Journey channel regularly, you're going to hear me say this a lot. Even in those early stages of soloing, you really want to learn and make a habit of being an active listener. You may find yourself, as you're doing this very, very elementary level of soloing, you may find yourself noticing that a certain note or a few notes sound really great in one part of the jam track, but maybe not as good in another part of the jam track. And that's awesome. Don't overanalyze it. Just kind of recognize it, be aware of it, you know, make a mental note of it, whatever. But again, don't overthink it. But if you do this often enough, you'll sort of naturally find yourself developing a little bit of your own vocabulary. You'll naturally start to find yourself playing short sequences that you'll recognize as sounding good in certain places. Again, let's not overthink it or overanalyze it. This is just a very simple way to start, and the point here is not for you to be doing some amazing solo. We just need to get started somewhere, you know? So I'm going to put on a very simple blues jam track, and I want you to just kind of think about what I just said, hitting notes pretty much more or less kind of sort of at random and listening for how they sound. And I'm going to demonstrate right now over a jam track what that could sound like. Okay, so that's stage one. Let's move on to stage two. The next thing you can try, once you find yourself moving around your scale comfortably, at least a little bit comfortably, try to think about playing short, almost singable phrases. You can play just one note over and over and it can sound good. Or you can play a simple 3-note phrase or maybe 4 or 5-note phrase at the most. Again, you really want to keep things simple. But what you want to try to do is think like a singer. Try to play little phrases that you can kind of sing in your head. And even if you've never sung a note in your life, you've heard people sing, okay? You just have to think about short, singable phrases, okay? Nothing fancy. I'm not a singer. But still, I can go ba 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. Short singable phrases like that. Ba, 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 ba. Short singable phrases. Again, I'm not a singer. Now, but let's extend the imagery just a little bit more, okay? What does a singer have to do between phrases? Well, of course, she has to breathe. So even though you might be starting to feel very comfortable moving around your scale, be careful not to play too many notes at once. Like I said, at this stage, you want to be thinking about short, singable phrases with what I like to call a breath point in between each phrase, okay? Remember, we're trying to be literally lyrical in our phrasing. We want to sound a little bit like a singer as we play, okay? So we're going to put on the same blues track, but now I'm going to be thinking like a singer just a little bit more using these short, singable phrases. Okay, so those are kind of phases 1 and 2. Again, phase 1, we just focus on hitting some notes and listening to get our feet wet. Phase 2, we try to put together short phrases. Phase 3, you might kind of say there are 2 components to it, okay? First, in phase 3, we want to start to blend longer phrases with our shorter phrases, okay? Maybe we play a longer phrase, you know, maybe 7 or 9 notes in a row, whatever, and then we play that shorter phrase, anywhere from 1 to 5 notes. Now, of course, you're not really going to count the number of notes as you go. You just sort of want to be peripherally, generally aware of how many notes you're actually playing. So, for example, maybe I play a longer phrase like this, and then I sort of play a shorter phrase like this. Okay, putting the 2 back to back, maybe you get a little bit of something like this. Couldn't resist the last couple of notes at the end of that second one. But you get the idea, longer phrase and then a shorter phrase, and they kind of complement each other, okay? So that's the first component of what I'm calling stage 3. The second component is this. It can be very helpful to identify the root note of the scale that we're playing. Now, just a tiny bit of terminology here. All that root note really means is it's the name of the key that we're playing, okay? If we're playing in A minor, our root note is A. If we're playing in C major, our root note is C, okay? You get the idea. Pretty simple, okay? Anyways, one thing that can be very helpful is that we sort of orient our phrases around that root note. Our phrase can start on the root note, or maybe it starts somewhere else, but it ends on the root note, okay? Again, this is nothing technically precise. There are no hard and fast rules here. Orienting it around the root note, like all the tips I'm giving you here today, is more of a guideline or a suggestion. It's not a rule of something that you have to do, but it can be helpful, and it helps your leads to sound focused and purposeful. They'll sound a little bit less like you're randomly noodling, okay? Now, quick aside. There's nothing wrong with randomly noodling, okay? Noodling kind of helps you find a direction in a lead, and after all, in phase one, that's exactly what we were doing is noodling. So please don't think I'm saying anything negative about noodling, that you should never do it or anything like that. It definitely has its place. It's just that as we get more and more experienced in our soloing, we want our soloing to sound more intentional, more purposeful, okay? So anyway, stage 3, as I said, has 2 components. One, we're putting together somewhat longer phrases and contrasting them with shorter phrases. And we may also want to orient around our root note. Now, right now I'm playing in A minor pentatonic, okay, right here at the 6th fret, root 6 pentatonic. My root note is right here on the 6th fret at the, on the 6th string, 6th string at the 5th fret. Then I've got a root note also here on the 4th string at the 7th fret. And I've got a root note right here, 1st string at the 5th fret, okay? And practically speaking, I'm going to kind of focus on the 4th string 7th fret note or the 1st string 5th fret note. This one down here is great, totally, usable, but I tend to focus more on somewhat the higher strings when I'm first getting started, okay? So now I'm going to be using that same jam track again, and we're going to hear me kind of orient around the root note, and we're going to hear me inserting some longer phrases and contrasting them with some shorter phrases. Okay, let's see how that works. Again, same jam track. Here we go. Okay, now stage 4, we can start to really branch out. Not that we couldn't have done some of these things earlier in the process, but from here we want to do our best to make our improvisation more expressive. So we're going to make a more concerted effort to incorporate expressive techniques like vibrato, bends, slides, hammer-ons, pull-offs, as well as maybe some somewhat faster passages, maybe some slightly more complex rhythmic phrasing, that kind of thing, okay? And when we do that, our playing will take a major leap forward. And of course, these expressive techniques are going to feel awkward at first, but we sort of have to force ourselves to apply them. We sort of have to actively, consciously make an effort to incorporate these other elements into our soloing. And this is a whole process all on its own. But again, you want to start to make a concerted effort to incorporate slides, bends, vibrato, maybe some faster passages, some more rhythmically interesting passages, okay? So here's one more short solo, this time using those expressive techniques, bends, slides, hammer-ons, pull-offs, vibrato, and all that good stuff, okay? there's one last thing I want to suggest to you, and this is something that you should have as part of your soloing moving forward always, okay? I mentioned it earlier in the video. I'm taking a moment now to mention it again because I just think it's so important. We always want to be listening. You want to continually be listening to what you're playing and how what you're playing relates to the chord sequence you're playing over. You always want to be asking yourself, where does this note that I'm on, where does this melody that I'm developing, where does it want to go based on not only the chords that are currently being played, but also on the coming chords in the progression. And this may be a tricky balancing act for you at first. You're going to be thinking about maybe, looking for the root note in your scale, maybe intentionally looking to add some hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, bends, all that good stuff. And simultaneously, you need to really be an active listener. And you might find that balancing act challenging at first, but I promise you, it does get easier. And if you commit to always be listening, being an active listener, your soloing will be much more melodic. It will sound much more purposeful, much more intentional. All right. I want to emphasize one last thing, that what we've discussed and explored here today is only a starting point. Remember, this video was about how to begin, how to get started improvising, okay? There are many, many more things that we can eventually work in. But if you really make an effort to take the steps that I've laid out for you here today, incorporate the different elements that I've set forth for you, your soloing should be starting to sound pretty nice, pretty natural, pretty creative, pretty musical. And that's a nice place to be. So really commit to it, okay? That's all I have for you today. I really do hope that you found this to be useful. And as always, please subscribe to this channel. Please subscribe to the Guitar Journey channel, okay? We're building a community here. There's lots of content here. There's tons more content coming, and I really would love for you to be along for the journey, okay? And also, please leave a comment. I really believe that even if we happen to disagree with each other, or maybe you just want to point out something that I didn't mention, we're all better for comments coming in, okay? Please leave a comment, okay? Thanks so much for watching. I hope you continue to have a great time on your guitar journey, and I'll see you soon.